Europe is a sleeping giant in my mind. And I think it would take something as drastic as America withdrawing for Europe to get its act together, but I think it will. It's going to be up to United Kingdom, and I think China will be playing a major role if the US kind of withdraws from its traditional geopolitical role.
Good morning, Times Radio Breakfast. It's coming up to 8:25 on Sunday morning. Now, a ceasefire in the war in Ukraine does not look any closer this weekend. President Zelensky has warned that Putin is planning a new assault into the east of Ukraine. And Times correspondents in Kyiv have told us this morning that they can see evidence of a Russian build-up on that border, with Ukrainians having to reinforce their defences there. So Keir Starmer, though, is moving ahead with military planning to protect a potential ceasefire, with military chiefs due to meet in London later this week. Let's speak now to Igor Novikov, who is a former senior advisor to President Zelensky and oversaw US-Ukraine relations. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Hi.
First of all, how optimistic are you feeling about any prospect of a ceasefire in light of what President Zelensky has been saying and the evidence that our own correspondents have seen?
Well, to be honest, it depends on Russia. And when it comes to Russia, I'm never optimistic. I can easily explain this. Well, look, if Russia were to stop firing at some point, given the current conditions and the Trump presidency, it would be suicidal for Ukraine to fire a single shot after that. Yet Russia is not stopping. In fact, there is a buildup. It's not actually the buildup in the east. It's the buildup in the northeast. So that's one of the directions they used to try and attack Kyiv before. Kyiv is not in any danger, neither is even our northern regions, but there is a buildup, and I think partly that's due to the fact that, Putin wants, those cards in his negotiations with Trump.
Do you think that Trump is an ally to Ukraine at the moment? Do you think he will stand up to Putin and his demands?
Well, let me be frank here. I think President Trump is on the allies with President Trump. That's as simple as that. So I don't think, to be honest, from what we've seen, we're seeing some positive developments. So certain sanction exemptions have not been prolonged. And that's kind of a very subtle way to increase pressure on Russia. And I think President Trump is doing that. Yeah, even that pressure on Russia comes in a very kind of at arm's length, with plausible deniability kind of form. And with Putin, I don't think that's going to be enough. I think we're going to see a lot of delay tactics coming from Russia. They're going to try and shift the blame to Ukraine. And their best hope is that President Trump switches his attention back to Ukraine. And one very important thing, Ukraine at the moment is retreating from that Kursk region in Russia, north of Kiev and Sumy. And when the Russian troops are coming in, you can expect anything. So we half expect a false flag there or something similar to Bucha. So they're going to try and shift the blame to Ukraine again.
Do you worry that in those delaying tactics that you talk about that President Putin could pursue, that President Trump, we know he's a deal maker, we know he wants to be seen as a success, that he may decide to walk away from brokering peace, not necessarily from the support it gives to Ukraine, but walk away from brokering any kind of peace deal? Where would that leave Ukraine? Do you worry about that?
Well, I obviously worry about that because, both the American support and the American support in trying to get that peace deal is vitally important to Ukraine. I don't think that will be the end of days for us. I think we still have options on the table. I mentioned before that if America walks away, and there's high likelihood of that, it's going to be up to Europe. And Europe is a sleeping giant in my mind. And I think it would take something as drastic as America withdrawing for Europe to get its act together, but I think it will. It's going to be up to United Kingdom. And I think China will be playing a major role if the US kind of withdraws from its traditional geopolitical role. Now, I think, the chances of that are quite high because we know that President Trump, is easily distracted and he doesn't like failures. So if something's not working out, he's going to look elsewhere. And we've heard a couple of things he said to that end already about being sarcastic, for example, quote unquote, in ending this war in 24 hours. Plus, you should remember that Russia is allies with Iran and North Korea, and it's really easy for them to set up a major kind of problem elsewhere in the world, kind of to try and divert Trump's attention towards that.
You talk about Europe needing to step up. It's a sleeping giant. Europe needs to get its act together. Do you feel it is under what Keir Starmer's attempting to do? He had this virtual meeting, of course, with 29 world leaders yesterday. It starts to look like we're getting some details of a potential peacekeeping force that could come into Ukraine if there were a ceasefire deal.
Yeah, I think that will eventually happen. Now, there are only two scenarios I'm kind of looking at the moment as being realistic in case the US withdraws. One is that Russia kind of plays on that Europe doesn't get its act together, and then Russia will try and exert as much pressure on Europe as possible, hybrid pressure. So we're not saying that missiles will start flying from day one, but you're going to see economic warfare. You're going to see certain attempts at blockades, provocations, and, the whole 9 yards, as they say. Or the second kind of option we're looking at, if Europe kind of realizes that and manages to overcome its bureaucracy and indecisiveness and acts before it's too late, then obviously Putin never moves forward if he's pushed back. So, it's always the spinelessness that encourages him. So I think if Europe is united, if Europe is fighting back, pushing back, and is ready to face that challenge, if Europe starts speaking to China, for example, Russia's going to be in trouble. And I think that's not the China part, but everything else Europe needs to be doing now. And I think it's getting there slowly.
Finally, can I just ask you, in light of what happened in the Oval Office between Zelensky and Trump, you were a former senior advisor to Zelensky. Would you have advised him to play that differently before he went in?
It's a non sequitur. To be honest, I've dealt and I've met with President Trump before, and it would have happened in any case. So I think it was unavoidable, and I don't think it caused that much damage. I think it kind of now is water under the bridge. We need to just focus on the future.
Really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise, thank you.
Take care. That is Igor Novikov. He's a former senior advisor to President Zelensky and oversaw US-Ukraine relations. Really interesting. Talk about Europe being a sleeping giant. Europe needs to get its act together. And interesting to say, we know that Trump's attention span can sometimes be limited. If he does decide to walk away and China decides to move in, that could be very interesting. Yes.